Colonel Weazen's mocking alien laughter echoed across the war-torn hellscape of Zeta Prime as he shoved the injured human soldier Marcus Grant to the rocky ground, not realizing that his arrogant cruelty would soon become his greatest regret. The twisted metal wreckage of Marcus's destroyed ship still smoldered nearby, a harsh reminder of the space battle that had stranded the low-ranking infantry grunt alone on this key Romulan military outpost. Now, Weazen and his patrol of battle-hardened warriors encircled Marcus, disruptor rifles aimed and ready to vaporize him at the slightest provocation. "Pathetic human, your kind are weak. Inferior," Weazen spat in heavily accented English. "The Romulan Empire will conquer your Earth, enslave your species, and erase your primitive civilization from the galaxy." Marcus pulled himself to his feet, meeting Weazen's sneer with a defiant glare. Blood trickled from the gash on his forehead. His body ached from the crash landing, but he stood tall. He thought of his girlfriend Sarah back home, and the promise he made to return to her. Weazen cackled, his soldiers joining in the laughter. "Then let's see what passes for fighting among your feeble kind. I challenge you, human, to hand-to-hand combat, no weapons, just fists. I will enjoy teaching you the folly of defying the Romulan Empire before I flay the flesh from your bones." Marcus knew he was exhausted, injured, outnumbered, and outmatched. But to buy time, to uphold humanity's honor, to prove his worth, he had to accept. The stakes were too high. This alien enemy could not be allowed to reach Earth. Everything rode on this fight here and now on humanity's front line of Zeta Prime. The course of the war, the survival of billions, the future of Earth itself. Humanity's fate depended on Marcus being the last man standing in this battle. Fatigued muscles tensing, he raised his fists and prepared to unleash hell on the arrogant Romulan colonel who had foolishly underestimated human strength, courage, and sheer tenacity. They circled each other like wild beasts, searching for weakness, probing for a lethal opening. Marcus and Weazen exchanged a flurry of strikes and blocks, fists crashing against flesh and bone. The Romulan soldiers formed a loose ring around the combatants, jeering and shouting guttural encouragements to their commander, while mocking the humans' efforts. Despite the burning pain flooding his muscles, Marcus matched Weazen blow for blow. The elite Romulan commander was fast and powerful, a killing machine honed by decades of training and real combat. But Marcus's unorthodox human fighting moves caught Weazen off guard. A Marine Corps combat specialist, Marcus mixed martial arts styles like Krav Maga, Muay Thai, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with the vicious unpredictability of street fighting learned in the back alleys of his rough Baltimore neighborhood. The two warriors clashed across the uneven Zeta Prime Badlands, their grunts and Weazen's alien curses ringing off the surrounding cliffs and canyons. Stumbling over loose scree as he barely evaded a vicious strike, Marcus spotted a brief window of opportunity. In a daring gamble, Marcus staggered back and lowered his fists, feigning exhaustion and surrender. Weazen lunged forward in anticipation of an easy kill. At the last second, Marcus coiled and sprang, transforming his apparent weakness into a compact explosion of kinetic energy. His knuckles hammered Weazen's throat in a precision strike. The Romulan reeled back, choking, hands clutched to his neck. His green blood frothed between his lips as he struggled to breathe through his collapsed trachea. The surrounding alien soldiers fell silent in shock at seeing their leader bested by a human. Recovering first, Weazen spat out wet, gurgling words in Romulan. Enraged at his own humiliation in front of his men, Weazen cast aside any remaining facade of honor or a fair fight. He barked orders to his men and the Romulans raised their disruptor rifles in unison. Marcus had only a split second to react before emerald energy scorched the ground where he stood. He threw himself sideways and scrambled behind the meager cover of some low boulders as blaster bolts filled the air around him. The Romulans spread out in a loose semicircle, firing steadily and relentlessly. Glancing around in desperate search for an escape route, Marcus saw nothing but open ground and sheer cliff walls. Either way promised certain death. Then his frantic eyes caught on a dark fissure at the base of the escarpment ahead, a narrow ravine snaking into a maze of towering rock formations. It was a massive gamble. Marcus had no idea where those canyons led, what dangers they concealed. The Romulans could easily trap him in a box valley for a turkey shoot, but if he stayed in this withering field of fire, pinned down with no weapon, they'd reduce him to smouldering atoms within minutes. Sucking a harsh breath, Marcus tensed, then exploded from cover in a furious sprint, his pounding heartbeat almost drowning out the sizzling crack of blaster bolts burning past him. Disruptor beams seared his flesh and left the scorched ozone tang of near misses. Reaching the fissure, Marcus plunged into the shadowed depths of the winding alien labyrinth. Echoes of Wesen's enraged shouts chased him into the folded landscape. Marcus knew that fleeting sanctuary of the ravine would quickly become a never-ending gauntlet of treacherous twists, dead ends, and whatever deadly fauna called this place home. But now at least, the endless canyons negated the Romulans' superior numbers and heavy weapons. This lightless, claustrophobic underworld lent itself to the guerrilla tactics Marcus had mastered, stalking terrorists through the mountain passes of Afghanistan back on Earth. Alone, armed with nothing more than his wits and skills, hunted by a murderous enemy hell-bent on revenge, Marcus knew the odds of survival were vanishingly slim. But the sliver of a chance was all a human needed. If he could lure the arrogant Romulans into a cunningly laid ambush, seize their weapons and turn the tables. Marcus slipped into a narrow side passage, watching the shadows and straining his ears for the movements of Wesen's kill squad. The Romulans had expected this pursuit to be a quick and easy execution, but they failed to account for the depths of human tenacity and commitment. As Marcus crept through the twisting alien passages, each plan and contingency flashing through his mind, two words repeated like a mantra: never surrender. Marcus plunged deeper into the twisting canyons, his breaths coming in ragged gasps. The sound of Romulan voices echoed off the stone walls behind him. He crouched low, scanning for any signs of pursuit. Years of combat experience kicked in as he analyzed his surroundings. Marcus spotted a patch of loose gravel. He backtracked, carefully placing his feet to leave clear tracks, then leapt to a nearby ledge. From there, he used jutting rocks to climb higher, leaving no trace. Below, Romulan soldiers clustered around the false trail. "The human went this way," one growled in their harsh language. "Spread out," another ordered. "He can't have gone far." The Romulan squad split up, fanning out into the maze-like passages. Marcus allowed himself a grim smile as he watched them fall for his deception. He pressed on, putting distance between himself and his pursuers. Hours passed as Marcus navigated the alien terrain. His legs burned with exertion, but he pushed forward. Rounding a bend, he stumbled into a hidden grotto. Bioluminescent fungi clung to the walls, bathing the cavern in an eerie blue glow. Strange insectoid creatures scuttled across the floor. "What the hell?" Marcus whispered. He crouched to examine one of the insects. As he reached out, it brushed against a fungal growth. Instantly, the creature expelled a viscous fluid. The stone sizzled where the liquid landed. With steady hands, he coated his combat knife with the corrosive substance. The blade gleamed with deadly potential in the fungal light. "Time to even the odds," Marcus growled. He backtracked toward where he'd last seen the Romulans. In a narrow passage, he found the perfect ambush spot. Marcus wedged himself into a crevice and waited. Minutes later, 3 Romulan soldiers rounded the corner. Marcus tensed, timing his attack. As the lead Romulan passed, he struck. The acid-coated blade sliced cleanly through the alien's throat. Before the others could react, Marcus pivoted, driving his knife into the second Romulan's chest. The third raised his disruptor. Marcus ducked as emerald energy seared past his head. He felt the heat of the near miss on his skin. Surging forward, Marcus slammed his knife into the Romulan's heart. The alien's eyes went wide with shock before the light faded from them. Panting heavily, Marcus surveyed the fallen Romulans. He quickly stripped them of weapons and gear. The familiar weight of a disruptor rifle in his hands brought a fierce grin to his face. Over the next few hours, Marcus turned the tables on his hunters. He laid traps using the corrosive fungal secretions, luring Romulan search parties to their doom. His intimate knowledge of guerrilla warfare served him well in the alien canyons. One by one, Romulan soldiers fell silent. In his command post, Colonel Wazin seethed with frustration. "Impossible," he spat. "How can one human elude us?" Wazin's second-in-command shifted nervously. "Sir, perhaps we should—" "Enough!" Wazin roared. "I'll finish this myself. Gather the remaining troops. We end this now." As Wazin led his forces into the canyons, Marcus knew he was running out of options. His body ached from wounds and exhaustion, but deep in the caves he discovered something that might turn the tide. Massive segmented worms writhed in the depths, drawn to the glow of the bioluminescent fungi. Marcus watched as one of the creatures savagely attacked a patch of the glowing growth. Working quickly, he harvested a large amount of the fungi. He created a trail deeper into the caverns, then circled back. As Wazin and his troops followed the eerie blue glow, Marcus sealed the cave entrance behind them. The scrape of stone echoed through the passage. Wazin whirled around, eyes wide with realization. It's a trap. Before the Romulans could react, the ground erupted. Giant worms burst forth, drawn by the fungal light. Razor-sharp mandibles tore into Romulan flesh as chaos erupted. In the confusion, Marcus slipped away. Wazin's enraged howls faded behind him as he emerged from the caves. Using a stolen Romulan communicator, he broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Private Marcus Grant of Earth's Combined Defense Forces. I'm stranded on Zeta Prime. Any human ships in range, please respond." As he waited for a reply, Marcus gazed at the alien sky. He thought of Earth, of Sarah, of all that was at stake. His ordeal on Zeta Prime was just one small part of a much larger conflict, but maybe, just maybe, his actions here could tip the scales in humanity's favor. Marcus's voice crackled through the comm system of the Dauntless. "This is Private Marcus Grant, of Earth's Combined Defense Forces. I'm stranded on Zeta Prime. Any human ships in range, please respond." Captain James Ralston's eyes widened in recognition. He leaned forward in his command chair, punching the console to open a channel. "Marcus, this is Captain Ralston of the Dauntless. What's your situation, soldier?" "Captain, thank God." Marcus's relief was palpable even through the static. "I'm in deep shit, sir. Romulans all over the place. I've taken out a bunch, but they keep coming." Ralston's expression resolute. "Hold tight, Marcus, we're coming for you." He turned to his helmsman. "Set course for Zeta Prime, maximum warp, now." The ship lurched as it jumped to warp speed. Ralston reopened the channel to Marcus. "Give me a full sitrep, Private." Marcus's voice came through, punctuated by heavy breathing. "It's been a hell of a fight, sir. Romulan colonel named Wazin tried to take me out personally. I managed to wound him and escape into these canyons. Used some nasty acidic fungus I found to make traps. Even lured a bunch of them into a cave full of giant worms." "Giant worms?" Ralston raised an eyebrow. "You had to be there, sir." Marcus chuckled grimly. "But Wazin's still alive. He'll be back with reinforcements soon. I'm running low on supplies and energy. Not sure how much longer I can keep this up." Ralston's fists clenched. "Listen to me, Marcus. We're still hours out at best speed. You need to find a defensible position and dig in. Every minute you can hold out gives us more time to get to you undetected. Can you do that, soldier?" "Yes, sir." Marcus's voice was firm despite his exhaustion. "I'll make it work." "That's what I like to hear. Ralston out." As the communication cut off, Marcus scanned his surroundings. He spotted a cave with a narrow entrance, perfect for bottlenecking the enemy. Limping over, he got to work. Using the acidic fungus, Marcus melted handholds into the rock face above the entrance. He rigged up a crude pulley system with some scavenged cable, creating a deadfall trap. His few remaining grenades were strategically placed as mines. Deeper in the cave, Marcus found a small alcove. He slumped against the wall, allowing himself a moment's rest. His body ached, wounds stinging. But there was no time for self-pity. The sound of Romulan voices echoed from outside. Marcus tensed, gripping his stolen disruptor rifle. A green-skinned face appeared at the cave entrance. Marcus fired, the alien's head snapping back in a spray of emerald blood. More Romulans poured in. The deadfall trap crushed 2, while a well-placed grenade took out 3 more, but they kept coming. Marcus fired constantly, disruptor bolts lighting up the cave in a hellish strobe. Bodies piled up at the entrance, but fresh troops climbed over their fallen comrades. A lucky shot grazed Marcus's shoulder. He grunted in pain, retreating deeper into the cave. The Romulans pressed their advantage, forcing him further from his escape route. Just as hope began to fade, a familiar sound cut through the chaos, the distinctive whine of human pulse rifles. A voice crackled over Marcus's comm unit. "This is Captain Ralston. Cavalry's here, Marcus. Hold on." Relief flooded through Marcus, but the fight was nowhere near the end. Wazen's enraged roar echoed through the canyons as he rallied his troops for a final push. The cave network became a war zone. Human and Romulan energy weapons crisscrossed in deadly light shows. Marcus fought alongside Ralston's commandos, their superior mobility and knowledge of the terrain giving them an edge. Marcus found himself face to face with Wazen once more. The Romulan colonel's eyes burned with hatred. "You!" he snarled. "Miss me?" Marcus grinned, then lunged forward. The two grappled fiercely, rolling across the rocky ground. Wazen's superior strength was matched by Marcus's desperate tenacity. Finally, Marcus pinned the Romulan, pressing a disruptor to his head. "It's over," Marcus panted. He keyed his comm unit. "Captain Ralston, I've got a present for Romulan High Command." Ralston's voice came through, tinged with amusement. "What did you have in mind, Private?" Marcus leaned close to Wazen's ear. "Tell your bosses this. Don't underestimate human drive and tenacity. This is just a taste of the defiance to come." Wazen's face contorted with impotent rage as Marcus relayed the message. Around them, the last pockets of Romulan resistance were being mopped up by Ralston's forces. Marcus stood, accepting a canteen from a fellow soldier. He took a long drink, savoring the cool water. But even as he relished this victory, he knew the real war was just beginning. The Romulan Empire would not take this defeat lightly. They had no idea what they'd awakened in humanity. Humanity. The battle on Zeta Prime had been won, but the war raged on. In the days following their victory, Marcus and Captain Ralston's team established a forward operating base in the alien canyons. The air hummed with activity as soldiers erected prefab structures and calibrated sensor arrays. Marcus stood beside Ralston, studying a holographic display of the surrounding region. "Sir, long-range scans are picking up something big," a young ensign reported, her fingers dancing across a control panel. Ralston leaned in, eyes narrowing. "Magnify Sector 7 Alpha." The hologram zoomed in, revealing a sprawling Romulan installation nestled in a distant mountain range. Massive energy readings pulsed from the facility. "That's their regional command hub," Ralston said, his voice tight. "If we could take that out—" Marcus nodded, the gears already turning in his head. It would cripple their entire operation in this sector. Ralston paced, weighing the risks. "It's heavily fortified. We'd need precise intel to even have a shot." "I'll go," Marcus said, his voice firm. Ralston turned, concern etched on his face. "Marcus, you've been through hell already. This would be a suicide mission." "With all due respect, sir, I'm our best shot. I know how they think, how they move. I can get in, scout the place, and set up some nasty surprises before you bring in the cavalry." Ralston studied the soldier before him, seeing the fire in his eyes. He sighed, knowing Marcus was right. "All right, but you're going in with the best gear we've got." Over the next hours, Marcus was briefed and outfitted. He donned a sleek stealth suit, its surface shimmering with adaptive camouflage. Microcharges and sensor disruptors filled his pack, along with enough rations for a week in the field. As night fell, Marcus stood at the edge of the base. Ralston clasped his shoulder. "Good hunting, soldier. Don't you dare die out there." Marcus grinned. "Wouldn't dream of it, sir." He melted into the darkness, beginning a grueling trek across the alien landscape. Jagged rock formations loomed overhead as Marcus picked his way through narrow ravines. Twice he froze as Romulan patrols passed nearby, their voices carried on the wind. Near dawn, Marcus encountered his first true challenge. A massive, six-legged predator blocked his path, its segmented body covered in bony plates. Marcus held his breath, activating his suit's camouflage. The creature's head swiveled, nostrils flaring. For agonizing seconds, Marcus remained motionless. Finally, the beast lumbered away. As the Romulan base came into view, Marcus's training kicked into overdrive. He studied patrol patterns, noting blind spots in their perimeter scans. Using his suit's phased camouflage, he slipped past the outer defenses undetected. Inside, Marcus moved like a ghost. He planted microcharges at key junctions, each one capable of wreaking havoc on the base's systems. In the armory, he sabotaged weapon power cells, ensuring they'd fail at the worst possible moment for the Romulans. At the primary shield generator, Marcus worked quickly to install a hidden backdoor. This would allow Ralston's forces to penetrate the base's defenses when the time came. As he rounded a corner near the command center, Marcus's heart nearly stopped. Colonel Wazen strode down the corridor, flanked by two guards. Marcus pressed himself against the wall, willing his camouflage to hold. Wazen passed within inches, close enough for Marcus to see the fresh scar running down the Romulan's face, a souvenir from their last encounter. Once the danger passed, Marcus redoubled his efforts. He tapped into the base's communication network, downloading troop assignments and security protocols. All the while, he catalogued potential entry points for Ralston's strike teams. Just as Marcus prepared to transmit his gathered intel back to the human forces, disaster struck. His suit's camouflage field flickered and died, leaving him exposed in the middle of a busy corridor. A Romulan soldier's eyes widened in shock. "Intruder!" the alien bellowed, reaching for his weapon. Marcus didn't hesitate. He hurled a stun grenade, temporarily blinding his opponents. Alarms blared as he sprinted down the hallway, searching for cover. Disruptor fire sizzled past his head as more Romulans joined the hunt. Marcus ducked into a side room, frantically keying his communicator. "Ralston, it's Marcus. My cover's blown. Initiating Plan B." Without waiting for a response, Marcus triggered his planted explosives. The base rocked with a series of detonations. Chaos erupted as Romulan troops scrambled to respond to multiple threats. Marcus fought his way toward the extraction point, using every trick in his arsenal. He lobbed sensor-scrambling devices, temporarily blinding security systems. When cornered, he used his stolen Romulan disruptor with deadly accuracy. Just as freedom seemed within reach, a familiar voice cut through the din. "Human." Marcus turned to see Colonel Wazen, rage twisting his features. The Romulan charged, energy blade humming to life in his hand. Their battle was brutal and swift. Marcus parried Wazen's strikes, his own combat knife a blur of motion. They grappled amid the burning wreckage of the communications array, neither willing to yield. Wazen's blade sliced Marcus's arm, drawing blood. Marcus responded by driving his knee into the Romulan's midsection. They separated, circling warily. "Your pathetic raid is doomed," Wazen snarled. "Even now our reinforcements approach." Marcus allowed himself a grim smile. "Maybe, but we've already won." Before Wazen could respond, the air shimmered. Captain Ralston and his strike teams materialized throughout the base, weapons at the ready. The full assault had begun. Wazen howled in fury, lunging at Marcus once more. Their struggle took them deeper into the burning installation as human and Romulan forces clashed around them. Ralston's voice crackled over the comm. "Marcus, we've secured the prisoners and crippled their defenses. Fall back now." But Marcus couldn't break free. He and Wazen were locked in a death struggle, tumbling through smoke-filled corridors. The base shuddered as explosions tore through its superstructure. "Captain, Marcus shouted between blows. "Get our people out, I'll find another way." Ralston hesitated, but the situation was rapidly deteriorating. "Godspeed, soldier," he said, voice heavy with regret. As human forces began their withdrawal, Marcus and Wezen continued their fierce battle. They crashed through a weakened wall, plummeting into the bowels of the dying Romulan base. Flames licked at their heels as they fought, neither willing to concede defeat. The last transmissions from the planet's surface showed the human ships fleeing the system. Of Marcus there was no sign, only the inferno that consumed the Romulan installation, taking its secrets to the grave. In the secure war room of the Dauntless, Captain Ralston stared at the tactical display. The Romulan base was nothing but a superheated crater, a crippling blow to the enemy's operations in the sector. But the cost had been high. Ralston's fist clenched as he remembered Marcus's last words. The soldier had given everything to ensure the mission's success, to strike a blow for. The Romulan base shuddered under the onslaught of reinforcements. Captain Ralston's voice crackled over the comm, urgency clear in his tone. "All units fall back. Repeat, fall back to extraction points." Smoke filled the corridors as human soldiers retreated, laying down suppressing fire. Ralston scanned frantically for any sign of Marcus, but the chaos of battle obscured his view. With a heavy heart, he keyed his communicator. "Marcus, do you copy? Marcus?" Silence answered him. Ralston furrowed his eyebrows, fighting the sinking feeling in his gut. He had no choice. "Team leaders, confirm all personnel accounted for. We're getting out of here." As the last human soldiers beamed away, Ralston took one final look at the burning base. "I'm sorry, Marcus," he whispered. Unknown to Ralston, Marcus was locked in a desperate struggle with Colonel Wezen. They grappled amidst the wreckage of the communications array, trading vicious blows. Marcus's breath came in ragged gasps, his muscles screaming from exertion. Wezen's fist connected with Marcus's jaw, sending him staggering. The Romulan pressed his advantage, but Marcus had one last trick up his sleeve. He fumbled in his pocket, fingers closing around a small canister. "Hey, ugly!" Marcus spat blood. "Got something for you." He hurled the canister at Wezen's face. It shattered, releasing a cloud of corrosive alien fungus spores. Wezen howled in agony, clawing at his eyes. Marcus allowed himself a moment of satisfaction, but it was short-lived. Wezen's elite guards burst into the room, weapons raised. Time seemed to slow as Marcus saw the disruptor bolts heading his way. Suddenly, the world exploded. A stray shot hit a weakened support beam, bringing down tons of debris. Marcus felt himself falling, then nothing. He awoke to darkness and pain. Something heavy pinned him down, but as his eyes adjusted, he realized it was Wezen's unconscious form. The Romulan's body had shielded him from the worst of the collapse. Gritting his teeth against the pain, Marcus pushed Wezen off and assessed his injuries. Cuts, bruises, maybe a cracked rib, but he was alive. He glanced at the still-breathing Wezen and made a split-second decision. Using strips of metal torn from nearby wreckage, Marcus bound and gagged the Romulan colonel. Then, wincing with every movement, he activated his subdermal emergency transponder. The device hummed to life, broadcasting a faint, coded signal. Aboard the Dauntless, alarms blared on the bridge. Ralston's head snapped up as a young ensign called out, "Sir, we're picking up a coded distress beacon." Minutes later, Ralston and a hand-picked squad materialized in the smoldering ruins of the Romulan base. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid smell of burnt electronics. "Move fast," Ralston hissed. "We don't have much time before they get those dampening fields back online." They hadn't gone far when disruptor fire erupted from the shadows. Romulan guards, still combing the wreckage, had spotted them. Ralston dove for cover behind a fallen support beam, returning fire with his pulse rifle. The humans fought their way through the complex, every second bringing them closer to both Marcus and the reactivation of the teleport dampeners. Sweat stung Ralston's eyes as he led the charge, desperation fueling each step. Finally, they reached a partially collapsed section. As they cleared away debris, Ralston's heart leapt. There was Marcus, battered but alive, standing guard over the bound form of Colonel Weazen. Weazen stirred, his eyes focusing on the human soldiers. Rage contorted his features as he realized the depths of his defeat. Ralston checked his chronometer. "We're almost out of time. We need to move now." Marcus nodded, then pressed his disruptor against Weazen's head. "You heard the man. Those defense codes, now." Weazen glared but complied, his voice rough as he spoke the deactivation sequence. The hum of energy fields died away just as Ralston's communicator chirped. "Sir, dampeners coming back online in 30 seconds." "Beam us up," Ralston shouted. Energy enveloped them, whisking the humans and their Romulan prisoner away. They materialized on the Dauntless's transporter pad moments later. As the starship jumped to warp, leaving the Romulan base far behind, Marcus allowed himself to relax for the first time in what felt like years. He caught Weazen's furious gaze and couldn't help but smirk. Against adversity, he'd survived. More than that, he'd won. The Dauntless streaked through space, carrying with it the fruits of their impossible victory and the promise of battles yet to come. The Dauntless streaked through space, its hull still bearing the scars of battle. Captain Ralston stood on the bridge, eyes fixed on the tactical display. A swarm of red dots appeared, closing fast. "Romulan strike force incoming," Lieutenant Chen called out. 7 warbirds, heavily armed." Ralston's heart made. "Red alert, all hands to battle stations." The ship rocked as disruptor fire slammed into its shields. Sparks erupted from a nearby console as Marcus stumbled onto the bridge, favoring his left side. "Shields at 60% and falling," Chen responded. "We're outgunned, sir." Ralston's fingers danced across his command chair interface. "Initiating evasive pattern Delta 7. Helm, prepare for rapid course changes." The Dauntless lurched, narrowly avoiding a barrage of photon torpedoes. Ralston keyed the shipwide comm. "All non-essential personnel, proceed to emergency evacuation stations. This is not a drill." Marcus gripped a nearby console. "Sir, request permission to man the port weapons array." Ralston nodded. "Granted, we need every gun we've got." As Marcus limped toward the turbolift, alarms blared. Chen's voice cut through the chaos. "Sir, security breach in the brig." On the lower decks, Colonel Weazen slammed a guard's head against the wall. Alarms shrieked as he sprinted down the corridor, stolen access card in hand. He reached a computer terminal, fingers flying across the controls. "Computer, locate warp core." The ship rocked again as Weazen made his way through maintenance shafts and Jeffries tubes. He grinned, tasting victory. On the bridge, Ralston executed a series of lightning-fast maneuvers. The Dauntless rolled and pitched, evading the bulk of incoming fire. But it wasn't enough. "Direct hit to engineering," Chen shouted. "Warp core containment field destabilizing." Marcus raced through the ship's corridors, pulse pounding. He rounded a corner to see Weazen disappearing into a Jeffries tube. Without hesitation, he dove in after him. The two men grappled in the cramped space, trading vicious blows. Weazen's elbow caught Marcus in the ribs, aggravating his earlier injury. Marcus responded with a headbutt that sent the Romulan reeling. They tumbled out into a corridor near engineering. A plasma conduit ruptured, spraying superheated gas between them. Marcus found himself cut off from Weazen, an impassable barrier of searing energy separating them. Weazen sneered, activating a nearby control panel. "You've lost, human. This ship dies with me." The warp core's hum changed pitch, rising to a dangerous whine. Marcus's mind raced, searching for a solution. His eyes locked onto the magnetic constrictor controls. With seconds to spare, Marcus reversed the polarity of the containment shield. The building energy discharge changed course, arcing across the room. Weazen's eyes widened in shock as the beam struck him. His body glowed, molecules tearing apart. A final agonized scream echoed through the chamber as the Romulan colonel vanished into nothingness. Marcus staggered to a nearby comm panel. "Bridge, this is Marcus. Weazen's neutralized, but we've got bigger problems." On the ravaged bridge, Ralston nodded grimly. "Understood. Get up here. We need every hand." As Marcus arrived, the situation looked bleak. Fires raged on multiple decks. Life support systems failed one by one. Ralston studied the tactical display, a desperate plan forming. "There," he pointed to a nearby moon. "We can use its gravity to slingshot us into that anomaly." "Sir," Chen interjected, "that wormhole is completely untested. We might not survive the transit." Ralston met Marcus's eyes. They both knew it was their only chance. The Dauntless plunged into the moon's upper atmosphere. Hull plating buckled under the strain as Ralston pushed the engines beyond their limits. With a final titanic effort, the ship broke free, hurtling toward the shimmering anomaly. As they crossed the event horizon, reality itself seemed to twist. The bridge crew blacked out as impossible forces racked the ship. Weeks later, deep in uncharted space, the Dauntless drifted. Its hull was barely recognizable, systems offline. Inside, a handful of survivors clung to life. Marcus regained consciousness on the darkened bridge. Emergency lighting cast an eerie glow as he checked on Ralston and the others. They were alive, but barely. A console chirped weakly. "Unknown vessels approaching," Chen mumbled. As rescue teams boarded the shattered Dauntless, Marcus allowed himself a moment of relief. They had survived. But as he gazed out at unfamiliar stars, he couldn't shake the feeling that their journey was far from finished. The rescue ship swooped in, tractor beams locking onto the battered Dauntless. Marcus watched through cracked viewports as his crippled vessel was gently pulled into a cavernous hangar bay. The sudden stillness felt alien after weeks of chaos. Medics swarmed the ship, whisking away the wounded. Marcus stumbled down the gangway, legs unsteady after so long in artificial gravity. A sharp-eyed officer approached, datapad in hand. "Commander Marcus, I'm Lieutenant Reeves. We need you for debriefing immediately." Marcus nodded, fatigue etched on his face. "Lead the way." Hours blurred into days, as Marcus recounted every detail of the raid on Weazen's compound and their desperate flight through the wormhole. He described the sickening lurch as reality seemed to twist, the disorienting moments of unconsciousness. In a stark conference room, holographic displays flickered with sensor data and complex equations. Admiral Thorne, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun, studied the readouts with narrowed eyes. "These temporal resonance patterns are troubling," she muttered. "Commander, did you notice any unexplained phenomena during transit? Visual distortions, sensory anomalies?" Marcus furrowed his brow. "There was a moment. It felt like we were stretching, being pulled in impossible directions. Then everything went dark." Thorne's lips thinned. "That aligns with our preliminary findings. We believe the Dauntless may have undergone a form of localized chrono-displacement." "Chrono-displacement?" Marcus echoed, a chill running down his spine. "Time travel, Commander. The wormhole's properties combined with the gravitational stresses of your maneuver might have created a micro-singularity bubble. It's possible you were briefly shunted out of our normal space-time continuum." Marcus's mind reeled. "But we're here now. We made it back." "Yes, but the implications are staggering. Even a minor temporal incursion risks catastrophic paradoxes. If you altered any past events, however slightly—" She didn't need to finish the thought. Marcus understood the weight of it. History itself could unravel. "We've initiated a quantum data quarantine. Every scrap of information from the Dauntless is being analyzed for temporal inconsistencies. Meanwhile, you and your crew are on mandatory leave. Rest, recover." Marcus nodded, grateful for the reprieve. His body ached, wounds both physical and mental far from healed. Days passed in a haze of medical treatments and fitful sleep. Marcus found himself staring at the ceiling of his quarters, mind racing with possibilities. Had they truly slipped through time? What consequences might their actions have wrought? A chime at his door interrupted his brooding. "Commander Marcus, your presence is requested in briefing room Alpha 7. Heart pounding, Marcus made his way through the labyrinthine corridors of Starfleet Command. He entered a room thick with tension. High-ranking officers huddled around a holographic display. Admiral Thorne's grim expression sent a jolt of adrenaline through him. "Commander, we've made a breakthrough in decrypting Colonel Wesen's command codes. What we've found, it's worse than we imagined." The hologram shifted, displaying a massive fleet of Romulan warships. Marcus's blood ran cold as he grasped the full scope of the enemy's plan. "This is their endgame," Thorne continued, "a full-scale invasion aimed directly at Earth. The attack you thwarted was merely the opening move." A ghost of a smile played across Thorne's lips. "That's where you come in, Commander. We're activating the rendition protocol, a secret armada, our best ships, our most brilliant tacticians. You'll strike first, hit them before they can launch their assault." The enormity of the task ahead settled on Marcus's shoulders. He straightened, meeting Thorne's gaze. "I'm ready." As Marcus dove into mission preparations, coordinating with ship captains and strategists, a nagging thought gnawed at him. He pulled up the latest temporal monitoring data, studying the readings from the far terminus region. His eyes widened. The quantum instabilities, the temporal flux, it all centered on the very area where the Romulan invasion force was gathering. Marcus's mind raced. Could their brush with time travel be connected to this looming conflict? Were there unseen players moving pieces on the board, manipulating the flow of time itself? He stared at the swirling data, possibilities multiplying. Whatever awaited them in the far terminus, Marcus knew one thing for certain. The fate of Earth, of the entire timeline, hung in the balance. Marcus stood on the bridge of the USS Intrepid, his eyes fixed on the holographic display of the far terminus. The swirling mass of quantum instabilities and chronometric distortions sent chills down his spine. "Admiral Thorne, the temporal anomalies are intensifying," he reported, his voice tense. "Our sensors can barely make sense of what's happening out there." Thorne's hologram flickered, her face etched with concern. "Understood, Commander, but we have no choice. Earth's survival depends on this mission." The Intrepid shuddered as the drive engaged. Stars blurred into streaks of light, and Marcus felt a sickening lurch in his stomach. Something was wrong. "Sir," Lieutenant Chen called out, panic in her voice. "The temporal distortions are affecting our course. We're veering off target." Marcus gripped his command chair as the ship bucked violently. "All hands, brace for impact." Reality twisted, folded, and snapped back. When Marcus's vision cleared, he found himself staring at a Romulan war fleet. Shimmering projections of Romulan ships flickered into existence around the Intrepid. The enemy hesitated, confused by the sudden appearance of Allied vessels. Marcus seized the moment. "All ships, attack pattern Omega, target their weakest point." The human fleet surged forward, weapons blazing. They punched through the Romulan screen, leaving destruction in their wake. But the victory was short-lived. As they emerged on the other side, Marcus saw the true scale of the Romulan armada. Thousands of ships stretched as far as the eye could see. "We're outnumbered 10-1, Chen reported, her voice grim. Marcus set his jaw. "Then we make every shot count. Concentrate fire on their command ships." The battle raged, a furious dance of energy weapons and exploding hulls. The human ships fought with desperate courage, but the cost was steep. One by one, Marcus watched his fleet dwindle. As the smoke cleared, Marcus surveyed the damage. Half his ships were gone, and the survivors were scattered and vulnerable, but they had bloodied the Romulan nose, crippling key vessels in the invasion force. A priority message flashed on his console. It was from Captain Reynolds of the USS Defiant. "Commander," Reynolds's face was ashen. "We're detecting massive temporal disturbances. Reality itself is coming apart at the seams." Marcus watched in horror as ghostly images overlapped their surroundings. Past battles, future conflicts, all bleeding into the present. "Sir," Chen called out, "I found a clear path to the Romulan staging area, but it leads straight through the heart of the temporal vortex." Marcus stared at the swirling maelstrom on the interface. It was an audacious attempt, but their only chance. "All ships," he ordered, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at his gut. "Form up on the Intrepid. We're going in." The battered human fleet turned as one, facing the chaotic maw of fractured time and space. As they approached the vortex's edge, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that whatever lay beyond would change the course of history itself. The Intrepid plunged into the roiling chronovortex, reality bending and warping around them. Marcus gripped his command chair, fingers tightening as the ship shuddered violently. Through the viewscreen, Marcus watched in horror as past and future bled together. A ghostly Earth fleet from decades past phased into view, only to vanish moments later. A rift tore open, revealing a ruined cityscape crawling with Romulan troops. "Stay on course," Marcus ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Track those temporal eddies. We have to reach the staging point." The human armada pressed forward, each ship leaving a wake of distorted spacetime. Crew members flickered in and out of existence, caught in pockets of accelerated time. Suddenly they burst through the vortex's heart. The Romulan invasion force loomed before them, caught off guard by the humans' impossible emergence. "All ships open fire," Marcus commanded. "Full spread of chronometric dispersal weapons." The human fleet unleashed hell. Temporal warheads detonated across the Romulan lines, freezing entire squadrons in bubbles of static time. Phased energy cannons lanced out, their beams twisting through fractured space to strike with uncanny precision. But the cost was staggering. Marcus watched helplessly as Allied ships winked out of existence, overwhelmed by the cascading temporal distortions. A Romulan warbird, its hull crackling with chrono-energy, broke through their defenses. It unleashed a barrage of torpedoes that seemed to move in slow motion, yet struck with devastating speed. "Warp core breach imminent," the chief engineer's voice came through garbled and distorted. "We can't contain it." Time dilated around Marcus as the ship plunged into temporal freefall. In the span of heartbeats, he witnessed countless possible futures unfolding. Earth triumphant, Earth in flames, Earth never existing at all. The visions overwhelmed him, reality splintering into infinite shards. Marcus felt his consciousness expanding, stretching across the very fabric of space-time. In that impossible moment of clarity he understood. With a thought that echoed across eternity, Marcus made his choice. He poured his will into the fraying threads of reality, weaving them back together into a single, unbroken timeline. The universe convulsed. The chronovortex collapsed in on itself, and in a flash of searing light Marcus was gone. Silence fell across the battlefield. The remaining human ships drifted, their crews dazed and disoriented. The Romulan invasion force was in tatters, their carefully laid plans shattered by an attack that defied the laws of physics. On a barren moon light years from the conflict, a lone escape pod crashed to the surface. Its occupant crawled from the wreckage, head pounding with fading visions of alternate histories. Of a man named Marcus who had done the impossible. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.